What is going on, true crime fans? I'm your host, Heath.
And I'm your host, Daphne.
And you're listening to Going West.
Hello, everybody. Hope you're doing well today. We have another crazy story for you. This one takes place at a lake. It's about this young woman who is aspiring to be a model. And
the lake aspect is definitely up Daphne's alley.
Isn't it up everybody's alley?
Pretty much.
It's summer. It's just, but this is in Illinois. This was recommended by Bridget, actually. So thank you so much, Bridget, for putting this one on our radar because I've never heard of this story otherwise. This is a very much lesser known case that has a lot of conspiracy to it.
Yeah, a lot of different elements of criminal activity going on in this case.
Yeah, and we do have resolution, but I say conspiracy because, do we have resolution? You guys are going to see.
I don't know. You guys can be the judge today.
So without further ado.
All right, guys, this is episode 637 of Going West. So let's get into it.
In September of 1996, a 23-year-old Illinois woman vanished from her car without a trace after landing an exciting modeling job. Just days later, a gruesome discovery found at a nearby lake proved that she was murdered and dismembered, leaving investigators with one of the most baffling homicide cases the region had ever seen. With numerous pieces of evidence at their aid, they worked to piece together the truth, exposing a shocking motive and a horrific plot. This is the story of Karyn Slover, the murdered model at Lake Shelbyville. Karyn Hearn was born on October 27, 1972, to parents Donna and Larry in Champaign, Illinois, which is about 2.5 hours south of Chicago. She grew up alongside brothers Kevin and Craig, and according to her dad Larry, Karyn was bubbly and warm and had never met a stranger. After graduating from MacArthur High School, she went on to attend Richland Community College in Decatur, which is another 45 minutes southwest of Champaign, and completed her associate's degree. And it was at Richland that she met her future husband, Michael Slover. This is obviously where Slover comes in. Then she became Karyn Slover. And this happened mostly, they got married mostly because she unexpectedly became pregnant and, they were together and they figured they would just try to make their relationship work for the pregnancy. Not the first time we've seen that happen.
Yeah.
So on January 2nd, 1993, when Karyn was just 20 years old, she and Michael got married. And about 6 months later, Karyn gave birth to their son, Colton.
And Colton is a huge part of today's story. I feel like basically the entire story revolves around Colton today, as you guys are going to see.
Absolutely. Well, they later admitted that their young age and inexperience, along with the financial burden of having a kid, would be part of what corrupted their marriage in the end. And it doesn't seem like they were super compatible to begin with.
I
they
think
probably shouldn't have gotten married, but
it was just one of those things where it was kind of like, we accidentally got pregnant. We probably weren't soulmates. We had a child, we trying to make it work, kind of.
They wanted to, but honestly, this really wasn't Karyn's fault. There's actually a lot about Michael that she didn't know.
Right.
So Karyn is a lovely woman. There was a lot about Michael that she didn't know. So her new life with him is kind of turning into a nightmare because she discovered too late that Michael suffered from an erratic temper and drastic mood swings. He also had prior charges for gun possession and burglary back in 1989 and 1991, and another burglary charge from 1991, all of which she hadn't known about. So this is obviously a big deal that he's like a criminal and she doesn't know this about him.
Yeah, she's like, damn, that's the guy that I ended up. Yeah.
Well, according to Karyn's friends, she admitted that he was both verbally and physically abusive as well. But with Michael's parents, Jeanette and Michael Sr., living close by because he's from the same area, so the families are near, Karyn just felt outnumbered because they were always around, kind of for necessity because Karyn and Michael did rely heavily on their moms for Colton's babysitting, and both Donna, Karyn's mom, and Jeanette, Michael's mom, helped out on a weekly basis. But Michael's mom, Jeanette, was especially passionate about her daily care of Colton and seemingly had no problem crossing Karyn's boundaries as Colton's mother.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of seems like she doesn't really care too much about Karyn at all, because she's excusing all the things that Michael is doing to Karyn, the physical abuse, the mental abuse, like all of that. She doesn't care about crossing boundaries with Karyn. She doesn't give a fuck about Karyn.
There's definitely some enabling going on here. And yeah, it does seem like Jeanette's sole purpose at this point is becoming Colton when it shouldn't be. You know, this is Karyn's son.
Yeah.
And she's kind of taking Colton away a little bit.
But also Michael's parents, you know, they're extremely defensive of their son. So they're kind of always on his side, whether or not he's doing something wrong.
Right. So you guys can imagine how this feels for Karyn to be
overwhelming.
Yeah, to be like 3 against 1, essentially. Karyn and Jeanette would get into frequent arguments about Colton's care because Karyn hoped to send Colton to daycare 3 times a week because she wanted him, God forbid, to develop some social skills. But Michael's mom, Jeanette, was allegedly furious at this prospect and didn't want him taken away from her. So she's like, I don't want him to go to daycare. And it's like, good thing that's not your choice.
Yeah.
But she was like making it her choice because she would also go to Michael and try to get him on her side. So, you know, lots of problems are forming.
So, of course, obviously, this got old really fast. And by May of 1996, when Colton was just about 2 years old, Karyn had had enough with Michael's abuse and his controlling family, and she finally filed for divorce from her husband. You know, there was obviously no real problem there. The divorce was finalized by the end of that month, and the pair even agreed to joint custody. But Colton would live primarily with Karyn, as long as Jeanette would remain the sole caretaker of Colton during the day when his parents were at work. So that was kind of the stipulation here. And the Slovers took this clause so seriously that Michael claimed that he wouldn't agree to the divorce unless this was maintained.
Yeah, this was really important for him, but we're seeing something that we don't see a lot in these kind of contentious divorces, and it's that Michael wasn't trying to keep Karyn. He kind of said, okay, you can go. I'm
going to let her go, but obviously Jeanette, mom, is kind of pushing her way in here, and she's saying, well, I've got demands. This was something that Michael really fought for, the fact that his mother could be Colton's primary daytime caregiver. Like, this was basically the only way that he would go down without a fight. And begrudgingly, Karyn agreed to this, so long as she was free from the shackles of the Slovers in her personal life. She's like, just leave me the fuck alone.
Fair.
Because obviously, Karyn had been so young when she married. I mean, she was still so young. She was just eager to move forward with her love life in the aftermath of her divorce. So she was ready to start over. You know, she's 23 years old at this time. At this point, she's ready to move on. So she dated a man from her gym named Brian Maxey for about 3 months, and also briefly dated another man named Dale Lucas. Then Karyn struck up a romance with a coworker named David Swan, who was a circulation district manager for the local newspaper, the Decatur Herald and Review, where Karyn worked in advertising sales. So
love that she works for the paper.
Yep, she works for the local paper. But Karyn had big dreams that extended beyond her small hometown. She dreamed of being a model. So by all accounts, she was on top of the world prior to her disappearance, having just booked her first ever paid gig through a modeling agency in Georgia. She had even discussed potentially moving to Georgia for more opportunities, but her shared custody agreement with Michael obviously, complicated this situation because she would need the court's permission in order to leave and would also need Michael to agree to share their son from states away. But for now, she had this one job that she was extremely excited about, and she was just ready to see where it was going to take her.
On the day she was murdered, Friday, September 27th, 1996, 23-year-old Karyn's car was out of commission for the day. So she asked to borrow her boyfriend David's car. Again, this is her coworker at the local paper, and he, of course, agreed. She drove to a sales call in Springfield, Illinois, which is only about 45 minutes west of Decatur. And on the way, she stopped in to see her dad before heading to work. Around 10 a.m., she received the call that she had been waiting for from her Savannah-based modeling agency. She had booked her first ever paid modeling contract. She left work around 1:30 p.m. to meet up with David, who needed to drive to nearby Cerro Gordo for a business matter, and Karyn decided to accompany him. Along the way, they stopped at her apartment to pick up some headshots to send to Paris World, which was her agency. And then she sent her contract and a $92 fee. This is like a processing fee at 3:15 p.m. according to David. Though this would later be viewed as suspicious that she sent like a processing fee because reputable agencies were not asking clients to pay for bookings, by the way, Al Tapley, who was the owner of her agency Paris World, maintained that it was a simple nominal fee to secure her spot on the roster, and it was nothing nefarious. Just $95.
Yeah.
I'm not getting
I just need $95 and
Or
I'll make
92,
sure
sorry.
$92 and I'll make sure that you're a model.
So after the errands, Karyn returned to the office, and according to her coworkers, she was telling anybody who would listen about her booking. Of course, she's so excited about it. She was described as bouncing off the walls, because she's working at a paper in advertising sales. It's a great gig for her, but she really wants to be a model. I mean, she's beautiful, by the way. And so this was really exciting. She wanted to tell everybody. She wanted to get out of the office and go be in front of a camera. But one coworker later remembered hearing her tell somebody the news over the phone, and that she seemed to shrink down and grow subdued based on their reaction. Like maybe somebody that she told wasn't nice about it, which we can only imagine was probably Michael, because this prospect of her living in Georgia isn't so exciting to him. So this is maybe one person who wouldn't like to hear that. You can also think maybe this is her boyfriend David, who doesn't want her to move away.
Yeah, so it seems like 99% of people are really excited for this gig that she's about to do, and there's that 1% that just
doesn't support it.
Not happy.
At 4:50 p.m., she talked to David briefly on the phone, and he asked her to pick him up some hair gel for him while she was out running errands in his car. This is before she was going to go pick up Colton from her in-laws' house. She's running errands. She agrees to pick up the hair gel. She left her office shortly after 5 p.m., and first stopped to pick up a dress for a wedding in which David was a groomsman the following day. So she was going to be his date, and then headed toward Michael's parents' house in Mount Zion, which is about 15 minutes southeast from downtown Decatur. So she's running a bunch of errands, and the last thing on her list before going home is picking up her son Colton from her ex-in-laws.
So he was out late while Karyn's plan was to be at home with Colton after picking him up from her ex's parents' house. But when he returned home from that rehearsal dinner, he found that neither Karyn nor her 2-year-old son Colton nor his car were there. Now remember, at this point, it had been almost 5 months since Karyn's divorce. So David called Karyn's mom, Donna, who hadn't seen or heard from her either. Donna then called Jeanette, who told her that Colton was still with them because Karyn had never arrived to pick up her son. Jeanette then called her son, Michael, to let him know that Karyn was missing, asking if maybe he had seen her, but he hadn't. Michael was working multiple jobs at that time and had worked all 3 of them on the night of Karyn's disappearance, so he hadn't heard from her or seen her that day or night. Michael worked at Cub Foods, the grocery store where he was employed as a security guard, and actually made a shoplifting arrest at 5 p.m., which was around the time that Karyn was believed to have vanished, meaning that his whereabouts were fully accounted for. They saw this shoplifting report, and they're like, okay, your alibi does check out because we know that you were there. Actually, police who arrived to document that crime and make their arrest had witnessed his presence, and they actually spoke with him.
Yeah, so it's like he's there.
Yeah, we know he's there because the police talked to him. Just after 6 p.m., he arrived at the home of the Schumann family where he was teaching their son a karate lesson. Then, around 6:45 p.m., he left the lesson and briefly returned home to shower before arriving at Ronnie's Tavern, which is a local bar where he worked as a bouncer at 8 p.m. He was even spotted by an officer friend of his in between that karate lesson and the bar, where he remained until his shift ended at 2 a.m. So it's kind of crazy here because there's numerous police officers that can account for where Michael was at the time,
Right, and there's very little space between each activity. He has a very tight schedule that evening.
Yeah, exactly. But let's back up here for a second to around 10 p.m. Police notified Karyn's boyfriend, David Swan, that his car had been found by another driver along the side of Interstate 72, and that Karyn was nowhere to be found, but she left behind a very eerie scene. The car was actually facing westbound in the direction of Decatur instead of Mount Zion, as though she were coming back from Mount Zion, despite Jeanette not having seen Karyn that day or night. And her belongings were left behind in the vehicle amid signs of a struggle. So it's kind of weird here, because it's like, why would you be heading... It's like if you had already made it to Mount Zion...
You would have had Colton with you.
Yeah, you would have had Colton with you, and you're heading back towards Decatur. So why and how did you disappear? Well, the garage door opener had been moved from the visor and was found on the floor by the driver's side door. There was a cup containing change that had been spilled onto the front passenger seat from the cup holder. David's umbrella and briefcase had been on the back seat, but they were later found on the floor. Karyn's purse and planner were found on the passenger side floor, and black cinders, so basically like coal, as if scattered from a fireplace, were left behind on the passenger side floor. Really, really weird. Why would they be there?
That is really weird, but remember it.
The lights had been left on, the engine was still running, and the driver's door was wide open. It was just a very strange scene.
Especially with the coal, being in the car. It's in part, it paints the scene that she was just taken. We've covered a lot of cases like this where maybe a young woman is pulled over by a cop or somebody's tailing them and they pull over on the side of a highway and then they're taken from the scene. We've covered so many cases like that, but it's the way that the car was found, the things that are in the car, especially keep talking about this coal, it's going to link to something else. So the fact that that was in the car is really strange and worth noting. It's so weird.
And to just give you guys kind of a general location as to where this car was found, it was found 40 miles or 64 kilometers away from the Slovers' Mount Zion home, which again was her destination that night to pick up Colton.
Yeah, and it's weird because her car was found near Champaign, Illinois, which is the area where she's from. And it's strange. It's why would it be over there if she's just going from Decatur, very close by, to Mount Zion and back home? There's no reason for her to be going up towards Champaign whatsoever. It's just strange. Why is her car there? It's pointing more so to somebody putting her car there and not her having been pulled over and something happening. So it painted a very disturbing scene, especially when 2 days passed with no word or sign from Karyn. Her parents waited in agony for a sign of her whereabouts. And 2 days later, on September 29th, 1996, a man spotted what looked like a bag of garbage on the shores of Lake Shelbyville, Illinois, which is a reservoir just south of Decatur. But inside was a woman's head. Horrified, he reported his discovery to police, but just down the beach, there were more plastic bags containing body parts, which had been severed and divided up while the victim was still wearing her clothes.
I just said, so maybe this indicates that whoever dismembered this person was doing it very quickly, because they didn't even take the time to take the clothes off of this victim.
Right.
They just went right to it.
Well, these bags actually had been in the water, but they were believed to have risen to the surface and washed ashore due to the decomposition. There was blood found on a nearby bridge, which was determined to be the spot where her body parts were thrown from. A fingerprint was found near the blood on the bridge, but get this, it wasn't investigated further. Well, stuck to the duct tape wrapped around the plastic bags were dog hairs and a small sampling of human hair, but due to the time that the remains spent in the water, there was no other forensic evidence to be found. But we're going to circle back to that hair in a bit. There were, however, remnants of ashes and concrete inside the bags, which had likely been used to weigh them down. And remember what we said was found in the car, all of that coal? So this is matching up. And this is why it's so weird that you find this in her car, these coals and cement, and then you find this in the bag where the body parts are.
Yeah.
So how does that connect?
Whoever disposed of this body really believed that, those body parts were never going to float to the top.
It was a pretty bad job, though, if all of them floated up.
Yeah, I mean, they found all the bags, on the shoreline, so it's like...
Yeah. Well, devastatingly, DNA tests and dental records confirmed that the remains belonged to 23-year-old Karyn Slover, as did the blood spilled on the bridge. Her autopsy revealed that she had suffered an unfathomable amount of violence both before and after her death, as she had been shot 7 times in the head at close range with a .22 caliber gun, and then posthumously dismembered, likely with mechanical instruments, into multiple pieces for disposal. Now, obviously, Michael Slover was an immediate person of interest. They were navigating this kind of bitter breakup, or more so a bitter custody battle, and she had spoken about his violent streak in the past and also complained about his family and everything that they were going through with Colton. I mean, even physical abuse was involved, right? But with an airtight alibi with his multiple jobs, Michael was cleared very quickly. So this is getting a little bit complicated. The person that you automatically think has to be the one responsible can't be responsible.
Right. Well, her past 2 boyfriends, again, that's Brian Maxey and Dale Lucas, were also questioned, but were able to offer up alibis as well. But get this. Like Michael, Karyn's current boyfriend, David Swan, had a criminal past. Actually, at the time of Karyn's murder, he was actively on probation. In the past, he had served time for impersonating an officer, which I will say is the creepiest fucking thing you can do. Because I feel like anybody who tries to impersonate an officer,
what are you doing?
You're trying to pull people over because you're probably a serial killer. I don't know. What other reason are you doing this for?
It's nefarious.
It's nefarious. Which obviously made the details of the car discovery even more alarming, as she may have pulled over during a falsified attempt at a highway police stop that was orchestrated by David. But I feel like she probably would have recognized him pretty quickly.
Quickly, yeah.
You know what I mean? So, I don't know.
But it's definitely a really interesting thing to put together, and police are looking at this like, wait, Michael had a criminal record, now David had one too. She's unfortunately surrounded by these piece of shit men.
Well, I was going to say, I think it would be a little bit more suspicious if, they had been dating and then all of a sudden they broke up or something like that. But, they were currently dating.
Yeah, so they're looking for a motive. But again, like I said earlier, with her potential move, somebody wasn't so excited on the phone.
Sure.
They're looking at David.
Well, he also had a lengthy history of mental health issues and had even spent time in an inpatient psychiatric hospital. Friends of Karyn's recalled that he once killed a deer while hunting and then used a chainsaw to dismember it.
Never heard of that.
Which obviously was eerily close to how Karyn's remains were found, but I don't know.
Does that clock to you?
I'm not a hunter, so if anybody is a hunter out there, maybe you can give me some insight. I feel like I know about dressing a deer, but usually they use a knife. I don't know about a chainsaw.
I guess I just why are you trying to dismember a deer? I'm a vegetarian.
To eat
girl.
it? I mean, yeah, that's just
to eat it, I guess, but with a chainsaw feels really messy.
I bet some people probably do that, but
let us
again,
know in the
I'm
comments.
not a hunter, don't really know. So based on these similarities, police wondered if he had been possessive of her and killed and dismembered her in order to keep her for himself. Well, he was 45 minutes late to that wedding rehearsal on the night that she vanished. And at the wedding on the day following her disappearance, David was reportedly acting very strange, according to fellow attendees.
I think kind of interesting, so sorry to interrupt you, that he's going to this as well. Your girlfriend is missing, and...
Yeah, he just decided to continue to go to the...
I guess it's if you're so close to them that you're going to the rehearsal dinner, you can't miss this wedding. Mm-hmm. But it's also your girlfriend's missing. She was supposed to be your date for the wedding. It feels kind of I don't know. Say what you're going to say next. It makes it a little strange, too.
Well, he was also accused of exaggerating their relationship in the press after the discovery of her remains, and he seemed to love the spotlight that was offered by being seen as this grieving boyfriends.
So ick.
Didn't seem like they were like as serious as maybe he wanted people to believe.
Yeah, now he almost wants clout for it, which is so strange.
Yeah, one example of this included sharing a card from her in which she wrote that she loved him, and he's like showing people this card.
And like showing the press, she
But
wrote
check
me
this-
a card.
Yeah, but check this out. It wasn't even his card, because her ex-boyfriend came forward and confirmed that it had actually been a card for him and not David.
That's even weirder, and that just tells us that David really seems to want the attention.
Well, when David was brought in for questioning, investigators brought up that 45-minute period in which he was not accounted for, before that rehearsal dinner, and he claimed that he was just running errands. So obviously, he was looking like a pretty good person of interest, so they zeroed in on David as the prime suspect. And although he had a verifiable alibi, having been in attendance at the rehearsal dinner ahead of the wedding the next day, detectives believe that the period of time where he was not around was adequate time to commit the murder.
Well, David remembered a key detail about this 45-minute period of time where we're not sure where he is, the unaccounted for window before that rehearsal dinner. He says he stopped by the bank to pull out cash, and there was ATM security footage of him stopping by and doing so, confirming his whereabouts and making it impossible for him to have been her murderer, which meant detectives were now scrambling for suspects because everybody that they think committed this crime is cleared. They're like, oh shit, he was at the bank.
Yeah, they're like, damn, Michael looks good, David looks good. Meh. Nope, none of them.
But despite the fact that Michael himself hadn't committed the crime and was able to offer a solid alibi, very solid, I'll say, investigators wondered if he was somehow still involved. Because both Jeanette and Michael Sr., Michael Slover's parents, maintained that they were home when the murder would have taken place, but they only had each other as their alibi. At the time, Michael Sr. was working as a pipe fitter at the nearby Clinton Power Station, which is a nuclear power plant, and the family also owned Miracle Motors, which is a junkyard and used car lot. This is their family business, but, it doesn't do well enough for Michael Sr. not to still have to have a job. But Jeanette stayed home and focused her time on caring for Colton because, of course, she did. On the evening of Karyn's murder, Michael Sr. arrived home at 5 p.m. And shortly after, Jeanette took Colton to Kmart to pick up a toy he wanted. She later said that she was expecting Karyn to swing by to drop him off while they were gone, and that she left behind a note telling Karyn that she could let herself in and wait there. Michael Sr. then headed to Miracle Motors around 6 p.m. just to do some work around the lot for the family biz. Which is important to note, I will say right now, that about 6 p.m., Michael Sr. is saying he went to Miracle Motors.
Yes.
Remember that for later. But when Jeanette returned home, Karyn had yet to arrive. So Jeanette called Karyn multiple times, but never heard back. So she headed to the used car lot, Miracle Motors, with Colton to meet up with her husband. So now they're both at Miracle Motors in the early evening. She explained to police that the three of them were planning to go to McDonald's for dinner so that Colton could play in the indoor play place. But when she drove them to meet Michael Sr. at Miracle Motors, Colton fell asleep, so the three of them headed home instead. So they were supposed to go to McDonald's, and she's like, well, Colton's sleeping, so we're not going to go there anyway. So they're not out in public. They're only at their family business where there's nobody else there, and then they're back home. And the only other person that can confirm this is 2 years old and asleep.
Yep. That makes it really difficult, because it's like...
Yeah.
We've talked about this in some other cases before about, like, when little kids are around when a crime takes place, it's like, do they remember exactly what happened? Like, we just talked about this on a bonus episode.
Yeah, Rachel Nichol.
Yeah, well, that one, as well as the one in the Outer Banks about how there was the younger kid that could have seen what went down that
Lynn
night.
Jackenheimer.
Yes, Lynn Jackenheimer. So it's like, it's hard because you really want to know if this child had seen something, but he's 2 years old.
He's 2 years old, and just so you guys know, he never claimed to have seen anything happen.
Right.
But we'll get there. Well, shortly after 10 p.m., Larry Hearn, this of course is Karyn's dad, called Jeanette to inform her that Karyn was missing. When Jeanette called her son Michael to report that Karyn's car had been found abandoned, he apparently left work for 45 minutes to talk to her and was clearly shaken when he returned. According to his coworkers, he was crying with relief upon hearing that Colton had not been with Karyn when she disappeared from her vehicle.
Yeah, so he's basically like, he's not so much moved by the fact that Karyn is missing at this point. He's just more concerned that his son wasn't with his ex-wife when she went missing.
Which you would hope he would have some concern, but at the same time,
he would feel like a little bit compassionate.
But it does make sense that he's just saying, oh, thank God that my son wasn't there and that nothing happened to my son. But he's still not looking so good because...
Let's get to that other part.
Following Karyn's funeral, Michael was making toasts and joking about how he was glad that she was dead, even supposedly telling one friend, quote, "That's one bitch I don't have to worry about."
Fucking asshole, dude. So detectives still had their suspicions, but without tangible evidence, they continued to hunt down every other fathomable possibility here. For example, Karyn had reportedly been feeling uneasy about some of her flirtatious clients at work at this newspaper, but this didn't result in any tangible leads.
Not like she had like a work stalker.
Yeah, there wasn't like any sort of angle like that. The Slovers would later point the finger back at Karyn herself, which obviously never looks good when a person goes missing and you're blaming that person, stating that her desire to work in the modeling industry led to what some might describe as a high-risk lifestyle. Like, what?
No.
She's not even a sex worker, which a lot of people would say like that's a high risk, but she just like did one modeling gig.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
It's like, I think maybe she means more so like, oh, well, you're putting yourself out there for creeps to find you because of your beauty in a magazine. Like, sure, I guess so. But it's like for her to say, oh, well, it's her fault she's leading a high-risk lifestyle. Like, that's a reach.
Yeah, that's a reach and totally unnecessary, especially at this point. The reason why they described this modeling lifestyle as like high risk is because it included sending off pictures of herself to agents and managers who may have not had the best interests or her best interests in mind.
Still a reach.
Yeah, still a reach. Michael also pointed to one instance when they were still married in which she went out dancing with some friends and was kissing another man at the bar, painting the picture that she was promiscuous. Which is like, again, like, you don't have to keep tarnishing her reputation after she's... You don't have to be like, all these things that she did in the past is probably why she's missing now. It's like... pump the brakes.
Well, and especially knowing that she's not only missing, but she's been murdered and dismembered, and they're being real assholes about it.
Yeah. Well, by the Slovers' estimation, the lifestyle that she had been living caught up with her. But this didn't help, because by the end of 1996, 2,000 tips had come in with nothing to show for them. Within months, developments in the case had stalled, and to the horror of her grieving family, Karyn's case appeared as if it may go unsolved. Michael and his parents took on the role of full-time caregiver for Colton, of course they did, though they initially agreed that Karyn's parents would receive time with him on a weekly basis as well. But after the funeral, Michael mostly cut off contact with her parents and began severely restricting the amount of time that they could spend with their grandson Colton. He also imposed rules about their visits. He didn't want them to talk about Karyn's murder. They were not permitted to take Colton to visit his mother's gravesite. He forbade any overnights, and he wouldn't let them seek counseling for him at all.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
And, it's like he wants to erase that Karyn was ever a part of his life.
Yeah. And this specific detail raised red flags for investigators because it seemed like he may have been attempting to keep Colton from, talking about a specific situation. But Mary Slover, this is Michael's sister, later said that this was more for the preservation of Colton's innocence than it was about keeping Colton from the Hearns, explaining, quote, "I know they had a terrible loss, but so did Colton, and Michael had to try to figure out how to deal with that. Being that concerned and involved was new to him, so this was a period of real adjustment for him too."
According to reports, Jeanette was so obsessed with Colton that she thought of him as her own and had an unhealthy fixation on him, to say the least. Because she allegedly even told friends, girl is offering this information up willingly on her own, that she breastfed Colton herself.
That's so gross. That's so gross.
It's giving like Hand That Rocks the Cradle.
Yeah, oh my God. She just
crossing the line.
I think she just really wants to be Colton's mom at the end of the day, and it's fucking weird.
Also, how the hell does she do that?
I don't know.
How did she have breast milk?
You know, I don't want to know. It's just disturbing.
You don't want to know about this breastfeeding granny?
No, none of that breastfeeding granny around here.
Well, reports from locals noted that Miracle Motors, remember this is the junkyard and used car lot that the Slover family owned, was better cared for in the aftermath of Karyn's murder than it ever had been before, and that the Slovers took great care in fixing it up and improving the aesthetic of it. They were also seen burning trash instead of disposing of items, which never looks good. I guess if you have a junkyard and like getting rid of trash costs money.
I mean, I know a lot of people do
especially in rural parts.
Yeah, exactly. Burn piles and stuff like that.
But still, people are taking note of this act because it is going to circle back, just so you guys know. So suspicions, of course, are mounting against them. And police secured a warrant to search their home and the junkyard. This is giving like Making a Murderer vibes to me.
You know what? That actually does.
Those living back there?
It's living back there in my brain somewhere.
But also don't picture it because obviously, as many of us know, with the Avery salvage yard, they lived there. Like there were multiple homes on the property, like trailers on the property, and that was also their business. And it was super rural. There wasn't other businesses next to it. This is like on a state highway. It's not their home. They live nearby. This is still in Mount Zion, but this is like a business on a highway. So there are other people and businesses around. This isn't like a rural isolated spot.
I always get a really bad feeling though when we talk about missing persons in junkyards.
Well, yeah.
Because they got those like the car crushers where you can just.
Yep. So samples from the junkyard and from the remnants of cinders found in the bags with Karyn's body were compared and found to be remarkably similar. They can't say for sure this is the exact same thing, but they're like, these are like the same, essentially. So unofficially the same.
Pretty damn close.
In March of 1998, the most expansive search of Miracle Motors was mounted, and it took 3 days, 20 officers, and 1 member of the state attorney's office to process the entire property. In the soil and gravel of the junkyard was a gold button that read Paris Sport Club, which is an athletic wear brand, which was the brand of denim that Karyn had been wearing on the day of her murder. And wildly, there were only about 1,200 pairs of that particular design and size made specifically for the women's clothing store Maurice's. So the odds that pieces of these jeans would turn up like from a different source is just incredibly slim. So they're kind of saying these have to be Karyn's pants. This has to be from her button, and we're finding it here at this junkyard.
Yeah, I mean, that's a really good piece of evidence right there.
Yeah, and it's like in the soil. So it's not like, oh, her pair of jeans, she left them here. It's just the button in the soil. That is suspicious.
Yeah, and we talked about the fact that they were burning a lot of things on that property. Well, things like that, like buttons, probably don't melt down, or
I feel like we often find buttons in burn piles because it wasn't just that. Found in the gravel covering the ground were rivets from those same jeans. Again, like you're saying, like the actual fabric was burned away and it's leaving behind the little metal pieces, as well as a white cloth covered button confirmed to be from the blouse that she was wearing on the day she was murdered. And remember, she was dismembered wearing her clothes. So, if it happened there and some of the buttons came off as well and they're burning other pieces, those items being left behind, very likely.
Well, and the fact that there's this white cloth covered button, that could insinuate that there was a struggle that took place. Maybe a button got ripped off.
Absolutely.
So the killer or killers didn't account for that button being misplaced.
I mean, what are the chances of multiple buttons and rivets from Karyn's clothes found in the soil and gravel of the Slover family's business.
Yeah.
Well, as the investigation really heated up with this new information and the odds were stacking against the Slovers, they suspiciously decided to randomly sell Miracle Motors.
Not suspicious at all.
Yeah, I say
in the
suspicious,
slightest, you know.
and I don't mean it.
Yeah.
The family and their defense attorneys later maintained that those clothing items found, or the buttons rather, the clothing pieces, accoutrements, if you will,
Sure.
were likely left behind in one of the used vehicles that they had been selling, which often came from foreclosure auctions and came with personal items still inside, like trying to use plausible deniability. But again, the chances of these belonging to somebody else, so like not even a thing.
Yeah, well, Michael Sr. said that he would simply throw leftover items away or that he would burn them, leading to the possibility that some of the same pieces of clothing were still in the gravel at the junkyard. So he's saying, obviously came from a different source. This wasn't Karyn's, you know? Well, on June 18th of 1998, so coming on 2 years since Karyn's murder, Miracle Motors was purchased by a man named Charles Pierce. And when investigators returned to search the property for a third time, Charles graciously allowed them access, and chunks of concrete were removed in hopes of matching it to the pieces of concrete that were inside the bags with Karyn's remains. There were also remnants of cinders found in that lot that matched that of the cinders found left behind in David's car. The hairs found in the duct tape were compared with the hairs taken from the Slovers' 2 dogs, who spent their days roaming that junkyard.
So their hair would probably be all over the frickin' place.
Yep. And one of the dogs was found to be a close match with the sample. Good boy, solving crimes.
Yeah.
So this later became a landmark piece of evidence, making Karyn's case one of the first times that dog DNA evidence was used in a murder case.
Pretty crazy.
That is pretty crazy. Well, detectives reached the conclusion that the Slovers were afraid that Karyn was going to move out of the state for the advancement of her career, of course, taking Colton away from them. On the weekend of the murder, Michael made 12 calls to his parents. They were also in frequent contact with their daughter, Mary, raising suspicions that the 4 of them may have conspired to clean up the scene and conceal Karyn's murder.
It seems like Michael was very close to his parents, so 12 calls over the weekend isn't super crazy to me, but I mean, it's more than I call my parents. I love them to death, but 12 is a lot.
Does seem like there was a lot of correspondence between the 4 of them during that weekend.
That maybe has to do with planning something. I think 12 is pretty excessive, I'll say. So investigators now felt certain that Karyn had been summoned to the junkyard to pick Colton up, and that she was then ambushed by Jeanette and Michael Sr., who were assisted by their adult children in cleaning up the aftermath, which included dropping her car on the side of the interstate in order to make it look like an abduction. Hence, why Michael wouldn't have physically needed to be there to be a part of it, because maybe Jeanette and Michael Sr. killed her and the other Slovers helped cover everything up.
This is really giving Dan Markel vibes, you know, the fact that a family is conspiring to kill their child's ex.
Yeah, if you guys haven't listened to that episode, check it out. It's Dan Markel Monster-in-Laws. We came out with that, I think, last month. But, I mean, it's unbelievable, especially because if that is what's going on here, which we're going to get into, and they are, like you're saying, as investigators theorized, afraid of her moving and taking Colton away from them, this is not your child. This is not your problem. This is Karyn's life, her child that she grew and birthed, and Michael's child.
I think that there was just a level of obsession that Jeanette had specifically.
Oh, yeah.
Because it seems like
breastfeeding Granny.
Well, you know, it kind of seems like all of the decisions that were made after the divorce, Jeanette had some sort of hand in that, some sort of play. Like, she had to have stipulations in order for them to move forward with joint custody. Like, oh, I need to be able to be the caregiver here. Like,
she's in control.
She is in control.
Well, to bolster their mounting suspicions, Michael was assessed by an analyst named Dr. James Butcher in December of 1998. This is a little over 2 years after Karyn was killed. And he was found to exhibit erratic behavior. Dr. Butcher also claimed that he suffered from grandiose delusions, paranoia, and hallucinations. But they still didn't have enough for an arrest. So in 1999, to further put distance between his son and his in-laws, Michael moved with Colton to Tennessee, which is so freaking ironic. You're trying to get your son away from Karyn's parents, but Karyn herself can't get distance from you and your parents?
Yeah.
Make it make sense.
Just really sad.
So, to the devastation of Donna and Larry Hearn, he allowed his sister, Michael's sister Mary, to legally adopt Colton. And she actually left her job to move to Tennessee with them. So this just feels like a family conspiracy.
Yeah, it's all coordinated. You know, she's moving to Tennessee. He's allowing her to take legal custody of Colton. It feels pre-planned.
It's creepy. And they were believed to have chosen Tennessee, by the way, because they have fewer rules for grandparent visitation rights. But Michael claimed that they left because he got a better job working for a siding company, but he was actually working for a fast food restaurant at the time, which you can do literally anywhere.
So he fucking lied.
Yeah, so he actually was slapped with like a perjury charge for lying about this because he told the police, oh, well, I'm working for a siding company, which he wasn't. He didn't get hired by a siding company at all.
Nope.
Full lie, which again is really suspicious and makes me not believe your reasons for moving to Tennessee whatsoever. But it wouldn't take long before his past in Illinois caught up to him. Based largely on the DNA evidence from the fur of the Slover's black lab, yes.
Good boy.
An arrest warrant was issued for both Michael and his parents, Jeanette and Michael Sr., over 3 years after Karyn was killed. On January 27, 2000, Michael was arrested in Tennessee and extradited back to Illinois. And Jeanette and Michael were arrested in their hometown of Mount Zion.
Well, their trial began on April 15th of 2002, and during it, a work acquaintance of Michael Sr.'s named William Richter testified that he had seen a gun in the junkyard's office, but couldn't remember the caliber or description of that gun. Though he also admitted to being kind of like this unreliable witness because he claimed that he was a heavy drinker. All of the guns that were legally found to be in the Slovers' possession were processed, and none were found to be connected to Karyn's death. Because remember, she was shot 7 times in the head. And it kind of feels like, it wouldn't be that hard to get rid of a gun. Well, the defense argued instead that Karyn's murder had been the result of a stranger abduction, likely the result of someone that she had dated or her ambitions as a model. Because, of course, they're going to run with that. Meanwhile, the prosecutor's case was largely built around the dog hair, the remnants of Karyn's clothing that were found at the junkyard, the cement that was found both at the junkyard and with her body, also the cinders that were found with her body in the car, as well as at that junkyard. The human hair that was found with her body was reportedly from 2 women and 1 man, and did not match the profiles of Jeanette, Michael, or Michael Sr. But still, on May 17th of 2002, after over a month of deliberation, all 3 of the Slovers were found guilty and sentenced to 60 years in prison. But Michael and his father, Michael Sr., were both sentenced to an additional 5 years each for concealing a homicide. In the aftermath of the ruling, Donna and Larry Hearn made another push for custody of their grandson Colton, requesting that Mary Slover's guardianship be terminated in the wake of suspicions that she had assisted her family in covering up Karyn's murder. They're like,
fair.
We can't let her have custody. She could be involved in this whole thing. And eventually, in October of 2003, citing massive amounts of suspicion against Mary Slover and residual bad blood between the Slovers and the Hearns, despite Mary's attempts at cooperation, custody of Colton was awarded to his grandparents. So, of course, Karyn's mom and dad, which just feels like that was the right decision.
Agreed.
Because we really don't know if Mary Slover had anything to do with this.
I don't think the Slovers in any way should win at the end of this. I think it's safest that there's separation there.
I agree.
Well, in recent years, I'll say there has been a growing faction of people who believe the Slovers are innocent. Many have called the investigation out for relying on junk science, meaning the circumstantial evidence surrounding the findings from the used car lot instead of DNA evidence. Because again, the DNA found with her body from the 3 contributors that did not match that of the samples offered by the Slovers were not matched to anybody, which I gotta say, what's up with that?
there's a few different explanations here that could point to some different scenarios. Let's say, maybe she was with a coworker of hers and somebody else's hair got on her sweater.
But it was on the tape.
Well, okay, yeah, totally. But could that
Sure.
that have, could it have come
Yes.
from a different source? Of course.
And, if there was hair on her sweater from a coworker or a friend or somebody else, and, the tape is sticky while they're taping the bag shut, that it got attached to it somehow, like, it's very possible.
There's just so many different possibilities. I mean, a fucking hair from a customer that was at the junkyard could have, got caught on something. Who knows?
And I totally get and agree with that it's like, sure, it's absolutely possible that the hairs could be people who are not involved, but it is just weird that there's 3 different people's hair, or 2 women and 1 man's hair on the tape. Like, I don't know. It's just like a lot. Lot of like strangers' hair.
I
So
don't know,
it's
maybe they
definitely
just had
weird.
some very hairy duct tape lying around at the house or something.
That's very true. It could have been picked up anywhere else. Obviously, there was dog hair involved. It doesn't seem like they were very clean people. They didn't keep a very organized business, so it's very possible that there was some other hair floating around. I just think it's a big question in this case. Do I think that they're the most likely people who committed the crime? Absolutely. They had motive. There's so many other things tying this crime to the location. They didn't have an alibi. They didn't go to McDonald's. This is where we're kind of bringing that in from earlier, that if they had gone to McDonald's and there was proof that everything was fine and they were getting food and Colton was playing, maybe it would be different. But we don't have their concrete whereabouts. We have nobody to vouch for them. So I think I fully understand in this situation why they were found guilty beyond a reasonable doubt.
Yeah. And, I was just reading actually an article about how, Michael is trying to clear his parents' names.
Mm-hmm.
Like, this was from like 28 weeks ago. But
Sure he
but
is.
let's get into more about this.
Yeah, because there's more reasons why people don't think that they're involved, or at least feel like how a lot of people feel about Scott Peterson. They just want more evidence. They're not saying they didn't do it. They're saying, convince me that they did with better evidence. So another example is that if Karyn had been lured to the junkyard and she was shot there and dismembered there likely would have been excessive noise and gore associated with both of these acts. But when the property was searched and sprayed with luminol, because it was, as we know, there was no evidence of blood found at all on the property or in the vicinity of the property, nor on any of the tools at the shop. So we also don't have a little video of Jeanette at the Home Depot buying an electric saw. We don't have anything like that proves, well, how was she dismembered? Okay, where's the tool that she was dismembered with? Where was she dismembered? Where's the blood? Where's the crime scene?
Yeah.
We don't have that either, which is pretty huge. It's also possible that the murder could have taken place somewhere else.
That's what I was going to say.
And they still committed it.
Yeah, it could have been, somewhere else entirely. It doesn't mean that it had to take place at the junkyard. She could have easily been like attacked at the junkyard, maybe, and then something else took place after that somewhere else.
It's such an intimate crime and a messy crime.
Seems very like passionate too, like overkill. 7 times.
7 times. That's a lot of blood spatter, and then of course using a tool to dismember somebody's body into multiple parts is very messy as well. So I just wonder where this happened to her. When asked why they were so adamant about cleaning up the lot after the murder, the Slovers shared that they had received a citation from the village of Mount Zion because they had let the weeds on their property become overgrown. So that's why they wanted to clean it up, and because they wanted to sell it at this exact perfect time. The workshop also didn't have running water, by the way, so the Slovers questioned how they could have cleaned up the crime scene at all, which, again,
if it happened somewhere else, they wouldn't have had to clean it up there.
It just, to me, it doesn't seem like she was killed or dismembered at this property. I feel like they would have found some tiny drop of blood or something.
Yeah.
And I think the running water thing actually is pretty important. In the 2 days following Karyn's disappearance, Mary and her parents made multiple calls back and forth, and she also babysat Colton for them, presumably so they could clean up after themselves, if they truly are responsible as the law has deemed them to be.
Which, I gotta say, and this is just my opinion, I believe that they were.
I believe they were too. I'm just like, where did it happen? I want a little bit more, but I also usually like to play devil's advocate in that way because, again, this is such a messy crime. Like, where did it occur? I want to know so bad, you know? I'm sure that Karyn's parents are just desperate to know more details because although they truly believe the Slovers are guilty, I'm sure they want, and they deserve those answers, of course.
They want the truth.
Well, Michael Slover Sr. died in prison in 2022, never saying that he committed the crime, never admitting guilt at all. And same goes for Jeanette when she died on January 8th, 2026, while still in prison. But on March 15th, 2024, Michael Jr. was actually paroled, and he is currently living in Illinois. Though he served his sentence, he is still working to get his conviction vacated. Reportedly, Colton has changed his name and is living a private life. Thank you so much, everybody, for listening to this episode of Going West.
Yes, thank you guys so much for listening to this episode. I mean, what a wild story. I do agree with you. I wish there was more, like, physical evidence that we could point to that, you know, determined, without a doubt, that the Slovers murdered Karyn, dismembered of her. Unfortunately, we don't have that. But, you know, the state felt that they had enough to convict the Slovers, and that's just the way that the law is.
I also wonder how they transported her body, because in their cars, it's not like there was decomp or blood found in their vehicles.
I will say we did have numerous players though here that could have been involved. So, you know, obviously Mary Slover was never
convicted.
She was never convicted for anything or charged for anything that had to do with this crime, but
it's a tough one.
It is.
Especially when there's a lot of players who might know other people who could have helped or taken part in something. This is a really, really tough case. But as we said as well, it feels like the law probably did get it right. I think it's just really nice when you can tie it up in a bow, you know? And
absolutely.
And I don't see Michael confessing anytime sooner or later because now he's a free man. So we're not going to get the truth out of him.
But he is trying to, you know, get his
conviction vacated. I mean,
he's trying to get his parents' names back to moral good standing.
Cleared.
You know, cleared. Yeah, I don't know why. Moral good standing.
The glitching that's happening.
I'm glitching, hey.
But yeah, I don't know. We'll see what happens if anything does happen with that. I mean, he was released, obviously, as we know. He did not physically commit that crime, at least not on that night. So yeah, let us know what you guys think. So many opinions and details in this one. Would love to chat with you about it in the comments on YouTube. We're on Instagram at Going West Podcast. We are on Facebook. We're on TikTok. Check us out. Give us a follow. Subscribe to us on YouTube.
Yeah, please subscribe. We would absolutely love that. That would be amazing.
And we'll see you next time.
All right, guys. So for everybody out there in the world,
don't be a stranger.